Welcome to my library, dear guest. My name is Ko, and I will be your storyteller. Today, we will be reading two stories. One about a player who causes discord and is then unwilling to communicate properly. The other about a DM who wanted his game to become the next Critical Role. I hope you enjoy. Story number 1. It's what my character would do. My most recent experience with misogyny. By the author, Shinner Lilac. I've played with this player in several campaigns. He always plays the same character. Makes stupid decisions that will get the party killed because everything else bores me. His excuse? Always, every single time, it's what my character would do. Oh, and his favorite way to spice up a session? Betray, leave, or otherwise attack the party. Now, why doesn't someone just have a conversation with him, you say? Well, let me tell you. Mini horror story to preface. The first campaign I played with him was with one other player. Our collective backstory was that we had been raised together as social outcasts. My lovely friend played a lizard folk. I only mention this because he used it as an excuse to betray the party for the first boss fight, because he's a lizard folk and doesn't really understand emotions. Keep in mind, this is a min-maxed build for an already extremely challenging fight. Oh, and he had just watched the BBEG commit genocide. So it was a completely in-character decision. The boss fight ended with my other party member plane-shifting us away. By DM rules, any character that starts PvP leaves the game, so he got to make a new one. This meant that the next session my character was introduced to 2 new party members. For the rest of the campaign, both characters proceed to blame me for the consequences of losing that first boss fight. Every time it's mentioned. He also proceeds to attack my character later for making one attack against him while charmed, despite him being a 25th level spellcaster who should know better. Because again, it's what his character would do. He also sulked about me beating him for the rest of the campaign. He also lasered a city of innocents in that fight, committing a second genocide. But who cares about that, right? We finished the first campaign, defeat the monsters, and solve the mystery. Resume current rant. The DM and I are both sick of his crap, so I reach out. Let's talk about what happened. I'm upset, but I think he's upset too. Let's reach some middle ground. This is where we really hit the misogyny. He refused to have a real conversation. It was all groveling apologies without admitting any wrongdoing and addressing any of my points or issues. It was pretty spectacular the degree to which he'd talk around me, just to say sorry again without actually addressing anything I asked. I summed it up to my partner as, I'll say anything to get you to go away because you're upset. I thought maybe this is just poor conflict resolution skills. I'll just try and explain next time and let the past stay in the past. I even helped him make his next 2 characters so that we could be buddies and communicate in-game and out of game about what our needs were and have no need for stupid conflict. It really changed little. I don't think he's a bad person. He tries to be better, but it all really comes down to this. If I'm the one making the argument, it doesn't count. I suspected this, but it was confirmed tonight when his behavior came to a head once again. This is like the 4th or 5th time, I lost count, and I had to leave the call. I was then treated to hearing my 2 male party members gently address the issues I and other female party members have expressed frustration with for the past year. we address things just as gently after suffering far more insult and injury. And guess what, Reddit? He finally freaking shared how he never feels like he has a voice. Because he doesn't distinguish between what he wants out of character and in character, and if it's confronted, pretends that he doesn't have opinions. Oh, and also, I'm the strategist of the party most of the time, so it's not that he doesn't have a choice. It's that I'm always telling him what to do even though he's on his phone half the game and is only interested in combat. How the party blames him for everything, and how he has a plan and the party just always endeavors to shut him down. In-game and out-of-game, I clarified that I only ever asked that he wait and make a plan with us. This is recorded several instances in writing and by witnesses verbally. The result of this discussion was that he had a plan the whole time, and was never going to run him blindly, like he has every single other time. But the meat of this, dear reader, is that he would only address the problem. He would only talk to my 2 male party members and male DM. I've tried to hear his side and integrate things, but it only ever counts when it comes from men. TLDR, my party member causes chaos constantly and refused to address it as an adult until I wasn't in the room and he was approached by men. I'm so sick of being treated like this by men I play D&D with. This isn't the first of my stories, and I know it won't be the last. From how I see it, that player might have felt especially wronged by the author. That it wasn't necessarily because of gender, but because he simply felt more comfortable with the other 2, or 3. However, I am not denying that it could be misogyny. I wasn't there and thus cannot be the judge of that. Either way, this does not excuse his behavior. No communication from one side or the other, or even worse, both, is what usually leads to horror stories such as these. Communication is incredibly important. I want you all to keep that in mind. If somebody makes an effort to talk to you about what's bothering them, take it seriously and take it into account. As should they if you have a problem you wish to address. That way, everybody can grow and do better. Nobody benefits from silence when you could work on things together. That is what the player should have done instead of making vain apologies until the author would leave him be. Of course it isn't the solution for every one of these stories, but most definitely for a large amount of them. Whether this is a case of misogyny and/or treating the female players at your table weirdly or not, one cannot deny that behavior like this often does occur in the stories we read. Whether it be trying to get women and the characters they play into uncomfortable situations, getting unwanted attention of a different kind, or simply dismissing them. It's something I read about too often, and I'm sure you hear about a lot as well. So in short, just don't be an ass. Now, on to the next story. When a narcissist tries to stream at my local game shop. By the author, Blade Master Fedora. The characters are, not their actual names of course, Joey, the streamer, the owner, and yours truly. Back in my college days, I used to frequent the local game shop in my city to play Magic. One day, the owner approached me and asked if I was interested in playing a D&D homebrew mini-campaign meant for beginners. I agreed. The DM was a guy named Joey. At this point, I had only played 3 sessions of Lost Mine of Phandelver. So there was a session 0 for character creation, and I decided to play Wood Elf Druid. We played session 1 a week later, and it was alright. Even though I thought it was kinda weird that he did all the narration while his fiancée did literally everything else, but hey, to each their own, I guess. I couldn't make it to session 2 since I was busy with a few term papers and work, so I approached Joey about this. He assured me that his fiancée and her best friend would run the same campaign again next week, They also assured me that they were going to do D&D now every Wednesday. So the next Wednesday rolled around, and no sight of the fiancé, her friend, or Joey for that matter. So I asked the owner if they cancelled, and he just shrugged. I am telling this story because it is a red flag for later. I got really bummed out by that since I had a ton of fun playing D&D. So when my next paycheck rolled around, I decided to start DMing myself. I DM'd every Wednesday at the local game shop until the pandemic hit. I met a lot of really cool people through that with whom I am still friends to this day, even after I moved across the country. Cut to a few months later. Joey started hanging out at the store again. One day in summer, he announced that he was going to run a one-shot. The players were meant to be determined by chance. Weirdly enough, 4 out of the 6 player spots were occupied by Joey's friends. The 5th one was the owner's daughter for some reason. So basically only one person got in by chance. It was supposed to be played with pre-written characters that were meant to be Disney princesses. As the store DM, I was invited to play, but I respectfully declined since I didn't get along with a few of Joey's friends. I didn't hate them, but they were the kind of people I didn't want to be at the same table with. One of them was a superpower game and always had a patronizing tone when speaking to you. Imagine the tone some people take when they explain something to a child. After the one-shot, which was definitely politically relevant because it had jokes about the MacGuffins being called Epstein and Weinstein, the owner's daughter approached Joey and said, "Well, that was fun. You should start streaming D&D." Joey and his fiancée were completely hooked on the idea. Joey wanted it to be, you guessed it, the next Critical Role. So they asked the owner if they could use the store for streaming, to which he agreed to if they managed to get a test stream going. The owner got burned badly on something similar before, which led to him basically throwing away $3,000. The problem with Joey is that he is not a great DM. I had a few conversations with him about his D&D philosophy, which is basically if you have players that act like crap, that means you haven't given them enough loot. So next time you have shifty players at your table, enable them. But the worst part was his world building. I will call his setting Joey's World. The actual name is the name of a French sci-fi comic series, but one letter is changed. Nothing from the setting was original in any sort of way. Usually I have no problem with that, but please bear with me. He stole a bunch of stuff from 5 ebooks, including names. He had a country named Tetheria, Forgotten Realms as Tethir, for example, which is literally Beauclair from The Witcher 3. There were also places like the Dune Desert and Ice Mountains. Also, he combined some of the Eberron and Forgotten Realms into one for his creation myth. Instead of Eberron and Khyber, it was Tiamat and Bahamut. He also thought it was brilliant that he put Phandalin in his world as the starting town. So, Joey's world was basically as original as Sonichu. Joey and his fiancée then actually wrote a proof of concept and a business plan rolled into one. If you have a business, you know that this is a complicated thing. You have to write stuff like business expenses and such. Something like this would take you about 30 to 40 pages, I'd guess. According to the owner, it was written on 3 pages of a school notebook. By the way, they refused to show this to anyone but the owner. So, according to the owner, the business plan had nothing about income or expenses on it. Just short, mid, and long-term goals for their project. So it was basically 1. Start streaming. 2. 3. Profit. Their concept was also interesting. They wanted to start something called a communal art project. So Joey wanted a bunch of minions who do literally all of his work. I know Critical Role has people working behind the scenes, but they get paid. So Joey just wanted to pay people in exposure. Mind you, the people in there were writers, translators, DMs, me included, and artists. All of these people were meant to do Joey's work while he gets to sit on his ass every Friday and just play the game and take credit for other people's work. And everything that was created in the project would also belong to him. This is where the trouble starts. First of all, Joey gets in his head that he wants everything that goes on in the store to be under his control. Yes, everything. We had a few dudes who had their own YouTube to review the latest Warhammer stuff. I didn't even know about their luck. They were supposed to be part of his network now. He wanted to own literally any piece of internet media that would be produced in the store. He called it the streaming monopoly. During all of this, Joey also started doing what he called a stream preparation campaign, which was basically meant as a prequel for the entire campaign. It featured an act of magical terrorism enacted by a group only consisting of Dragonborn. His idea was to portray a society of persecution and discrimination. Considering his DM style, this could have been insanely risky. They also gave each of the players strict character creation rules to prevent weird furry stuff, since this is a serious campaign that deals with serious topics. Also, his fiancée was going to be one of the players in the stream campaign. He told me how proud he was of her character concept. A half Aasimar, half Tiefling assassin rogue. For him, it was an incredibly deep character concept since it was dualistic. This could have easily turned into another Spazzle fanfic horror all by itself. My Wednesdays of local game shop DMing were all supposed to be homebrewed and take place in Joey's world. Because, once we start streaming, I, as the store's DM, will be the public face of the streaming campaign. Dude legitimately thought that after we started streaming, people would go crazy and do something like Beatlesmania. He also wanted me to be his co-author, which I declined since I was still very busy with college. And I was glad that I noped out of there early. Mind you, at this point, he didn't have any of the necessary equipment to start streaming. That means no lighting, no sound, and more important, no cameras. The store also had a Discord where the Joey's World project was discussed. Joey started posting work requests on it, requesting that the team of writers change the names of all the places in his setting. Right after he was done, he deleted everything that might hint at someone else being involved with the name creation. That's when they started seeing the first red flags. His Power Gamer friend was the first one to confront him about that. Joey just said, "Yeah, I deleted it because that work step is done. I don't want anyone to steal my setting before I can publish it in a book." And then the bickering started. The room the owner set aside for the stream was to be cleared out for old furniture. I helped anyway, since again, the owner is a good friend of mine. Joey said that he was going to be there with bells on. The only other person that showed up was the Power Gamer. Power Gamer understandably was really pissed after that. I don't know all the details since I mostly prefer to stay out of drama. At the end of 2019, Joey put the entire campaign on ice because of creative differences. Early 2020, Power Gamer dropped out of the project. Joey used this as an excuse to save face and also cancel the entire project. He claimed that Power Gamer was trying to sabotage the project because he didn't get to be a player on the stream. My theory? Joey must have realized that equipment is really expensive and preparing something like this takes a lot of time, which he didn't have since he also had to study for his final college exams. But he managed to throw Power Gamer under the bus, blaming the failure of the entire project on him alone. Power Gamer might not be the nicest guy, but he didn't deserve that. This failed attempt at streaming destroyed a lot of friendships at the store, and turned Joey into a laughingstock. Joey contacted me a few months after also trying to pawn off his old group on me, with whom he also got into a fight. He lovingly referred to them as a bunch of min-maxers. I'm just glad that my Wednesday group survived. Okay, so let me say this. I do not care if you and a group of close friends that only you people play together take ideas from other properties and build them in. As long as it isn't the entire campaign and you do let people know what you were inspired by. I didn't see any problem with Joey wanting to use the official Forgotten Realms lore. That's what it's there for, after all. If he uses the names of towns and such, who cares? It does become a problem, however, when you try to pass this off as your own work. And even more so when you try to profit off of it. Really, this was doomed from the start. If Joey genuinely wanted to stream his campaign with people who do agree to do it, go for it. But if you just go into it without preparation, it is bound to crash and fail. He wanted the fame, but he didn't want to work for it. He wanted people to do his work for him while doing nothing himself. He wanted to boss people around and be involved with his project without having anything to show for it. Again, take your inspirations from wherever. Use the official lore to the 9 hells and back. Just don't say it was your mind these ideas came from. And do not try to make money off of them. Before we end this video, I would like to mention that today's stories have been suggested to me on my Discord server. Join if you'd like to. The link will be in the description. That was it for today's story. I hope you enjoyed your stay and that I will see you again soon. For there are always more stories to be shared.